Well, it's like a dream come true. I mean, there's been a lot of hard work that we put into it, but when you get hard work, you get success.
Selena Quintanilla Perez, Lake Jackson, Texas, born April 16, 1971, died March 31, 1995. Few artists have ever carried the weight of two worlds on their shoulders the way Selena did. In the early 90s, she was already a phenomenon in Tejano music, selling out arenas, breaking records, and drawing a fan base that treated her as much like family as a star. But unlike many regional icons, Selena was perfectly positioned to break beyond cultural borders. Her voice carried the warmth of her heritage and the polish of a global pop star. Her stage presence mixed the intimacy of a hometown performance with the magnetism of an arena headliner. And with a long-awaited English language album on the way, she was just steps from becoming not just the Queen of Tejano, but one of the most famous entertainers in the world. Her life, however, would be marked not by the slow arc of a career, but by the abrupt end of a dream. At only 23 years old, Selena's story shifted from rising superstardom to tragedy in a matter of seconds, a loss made more haunting because of how close she was to the very peak she worked her whole life to reach. Born in Lake Jackson, Texas, and raised in a family band led by her father Abraham, Selena's career started before most kids learned to ride a bike. By her teens, she had already won awards, dominated charts in the Spanish-speaking market, and become a symbol of pride for Mexican-American audiences who saw themselves in her success. She was young, beautiful, relatable, and talented enough to bridge cultures, the rare kind of artist whose music wasn't just catchy, but generational. Behind the spotlight though, the machinery of her fame relied on a tight inner circle. That circle would eventually include Yolanda Saldivar, a fan-turned-employee whose devotion masked a dangerous obsession. It was a reminder that celebrity can often invite strangers into the most private spaces, and not all of them should be trusted. By 1995, Selena was on the verge of releasing Dreaming of You, an album meant to cement her place in mainstream American pop. Instead, it became a posthumous farewell, released just months after her murder. For fans, it was more than losing a singer. It was like losing a generational voice before she had the chance to speak to the world in full. Selena's rise was meteoric, but her end was a sudden eclipse, a career and a life that felt it was only just the beginning. What happened? Let's talk about it. Salute to Mr. Creative on IG for this request. It's your boy JC, StuntedGrowthMusic. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Selena was a singer, songwriter, and performer from Lake Jackson, Texas, whose career began as the lead vocalist of her family band, Selena y Los Dinos. Managed by her father Abraham, she grew from performing at small events to becoming one of the most recognized voices in Tejano music. By the late 80s and early 90s, Selena had won multiple Tejano music awards and signed with EMI Latin, releasing albums that broke sales record in the genre. Her 1992 album Entre en mi Mundo and 1994's Amor Prohibido solidified her status as the Queen of Tejano, bringing her mainstream attention in Latin markets. Selena's charm, fashion sense, and bilingual appeal positioned her for a major crossover into English language pop. By 1995, she was recording Dreaming of You, her first English album, expected to launch her into a new level of fame, one she tragically never see fulfilled. Stunt number 1, Trusting the Wrong Person. Selena's rise was built on talent, discipline, and a carefully managed image, but even the most guarded careers can be undone by a single breach of trust. For Selena, that breach came in the form of Yolanda Saldivar, a former nurse who became president of her fan club in 1991. Saldivar appeared to be a devoted supporter, eager to help grow Selena's brand and manage her growing clothing boutiques. Over time, she became deeply embedded in Selena's business affairs, holding access to sensitive financial records and functioning as a gatekeeper to fans and employees alike. As Selena's schedule became more demanding, she relied heavily on Saldivar to manage fan interactions and boutique operations. What Selena didn't know was that her trusted associate had been embezzling funds, creating a trail of missing money that was starting to raise suspicion. When complaints from fans and employees reached the family, Her father confronted Saldivar, demanding she produce records and warning her to stay away from Selena. But Selena, known for her forgiving nature, attempted to handle the situation personally. She believed Saldivar could be reasoned with and wanted to retrieve important financial documents before cutting ties. This decision placed her directly in harm's way. On March 31, 1995, during a meeting at a Corpus Christi motel, Saldivar shot Selena in the back as she tried to flee. The bullet severed a major artery, and despite running nearly 400 feet to the hotel lobby for help, Selena collapsed and died from blood loss at just 23 years old. This wasn't a career stumble in the traditional sense. It was the ultimate derailment, born not from artistic miscalculation, but from misplaced trust. The tragedy underscored how fame can invite dangerous intimacy with people whose intentions aren't what they seem. Stunt number 2, a career dependent on timing. Selena's career was unique in that her success relied heavily on perfect timing, both in the Latin market she dominated and her long-awaited crossover to English language pop. By 1995, she was in the middle of recording Dreaming of You, an album strategically designed to introduce her to mainstream audiences without alienating her Tejano fanbase. The plan was simple: maintain her dominance in Latin music while becoming a household name in American pop, following in the footsteps of Gloria Estefan and paving the way for future Latin crossover stars like Shakira and Ricky Martin. Everything was in motion. EMI was preparing a massive promotional push. Radio stations were already eager for her English singles. Fashion lines, commercials, and endorsements were on the horizon. For an artist only 23 years old, she had the rare combination of an established core audience and a fresh, untapped market ahead of her. But that timing was everything, and her death froze it in place. The English language market never got to experience Selena as a living, evolving artist. Instead, her crossover moment became a posthumous one, with Dreaming of You releasing just 4 months after her death. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, making history for a Latin artist, but its impact was bittersweet and haunting. What should have been the first step in a decade-long pop career became a memorial to potential. Selena's inability to personally promote, tour, and grow with the project meant her crossover was defined by what could have been rather than what was. Timing had always been one of her greatest assets, but in this case, the moment arrived without her, leaving fans to imagine a career arc that ended before it truly began. Stunt number 3, the pressure of being the face of a genre. With an artist in the position Selena was at such a young age, you could imagine the kind of pressure that comes with. By the early 90s, Selena wasn't just a successful Tejano artist, she was Tejano music to much of the world. The genre, long celebrated in Mexican-American communities, had never produced a star with her mainstream potential. That visibility came with intense pressure. She was expected to not only sustain her own success, but to carry an entire style of music into new markets, representing a culture and a community every time she stepped on stage or in front of a camera. This responsibility was amplified by her image. Selena's life and career were built on accessibility. She spoke directly to fans, signed autographs for hours, and made herself approachable in a way that was rare for stars on her level. But that openness, while endearing, came with risk. Her constant interaction with the public meant blurred boundaries between personal and professional spaces, making it harder to shield herself from opportunists. In the music industry, where pop is often marketed as personality as much as talent, Selena's brand was inseparable from her physical presence. Unlike artists who could retreat between album cycles, Selena's life was a constant public performance, a balancing act of fulfilling fan expectations, running businesses, and preparing for her crossover. That lifestyle is exhausting for any artist, let alone one in her early 20s still learning the industry's darker realities. Her murder became the ultimate and most tragic example of how that openness, the same quality that fueled her rise, also left her vulnerable. The pressure to be the approachable, ever-available face of Tejano music meant she sometimes stepped into situations out of loyalty or trust, even when danger was present. For Selena, being the face of a genre was both her greatest honor and her most dangerous role. All in all, Selena's story is one of extraordinary talent, cultural pride, and a life cut short just as it was about to change forever. She had already achieved what few artists from niche genres ever could, dominating her scene while positioning herself for global recognition. Her voice, style, and spirit connected generations, making her an icon in life and a legend in death. Yet the same openness and trust that endeared her to millions ultimately betrayed her in the most cowardice way. The timing of her loss left fans with a permanent sense of what could have been a career arc frozen in its most exciting chapter. Decades later, Selena remains a symbol of possibility and resilience, inspiring new artists while reminding the world that even the most brightest stars are not promised the time they deserve to shine, and that greatness sometimes arrives unfinished. Rest in peace to Selena. It's your boy JC StuntedGrowthMusic, and I'm out.